Hello, everyone. I am Deacon Chris, and this is the Word of the Month video for this week. We are continuing this month talking about the word vocation. And Pastor Aaron, the first week, talked a lot about how vocation is rooted in our baptism. And a couple weeks ago, we saw a video of a man, Jim Carrey, who many of us know as an actor. But it was a video about him, how he has kind of morphed into this artist and how he has found art to be this sense of vocation for him. So anytime I think about this word, I think about the scripture in Acts 9. Now, Acts 9 is a fairly popular chapter, and it's popular because it's the conversion story of the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul is huge in the Christian history story because of the way that he was converted from someone who was persecuting Christians to becoming one of the apostles, and how he became this person that wrote a lot of what we have in the New Testament. And we tend to go to Acts 9 because of the importance it is in the life of Paul. But the reason that whenever I think of this word vocation, I go to Acts 9, it's actually for someone else that's in that story. And many of you have heard me talk about this man named Ananias. And Ananias, in this story, there's several people throughout Scripture named Ananias, but as far as we can tell, this is the only time that we ever hear about this person. And in this story, we see Paul, who is blinded by Jesus appearing to him. And Jesus sends Paul to this one town and says that this man is going to come to him. Well, God also visits this man named Ananias. And he tells Ananias that Paul has been blinded, but God is going to use him as an instrument. And he needs Ananias to go to Paul and to tell him the story so that he can become this instrument. Now, reluctantly, Ananias says, but this is the same Paul that has been persecuting people. Are you sure you want me to do this? And God says very confidently, go do this. I want you to tell him the story, and I want you to baptize him. He's going to be praying. I want you to baptize him, tell him the story. So Ananias responds, he goes, and we hear this, we see the story of where Paul is baptized, is told the story of God, and it's this conversion moment for Paul. And we in the church tend to focus on this person, Paul. And it's mostly because we go on to hear this long narrative about Paul, and we never hear about Ananias again. Now, the reason I love this story is because typically when we talk about vocation, we think about these long epic stories. We tend to focus on these sort of superhero myth kind of stories of Paul, stories of David, stories of Moses and Abraham, and all these long arcing narratives of when God calls people and they do this big, gigantic thing throughout their life. When we move into sort of modern times, we hear about stories like Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Billy Graham, all of these people. But the truth is that that's sort of a narrow understanding of vocation. Because vocation, while it does include this lifelong epic narrative, vocation also includes these moments when we answer the call of God, and sometimes it is just for a few minutes, sometimes it's just for a day, but in essence, there's this long-term kind of sense of vocation, but there's also this short-term response sense of vocation. And what I love about the story of Ananias is how it forces us to think about vocation in the sense of the way that we can listen to the call of God in a brief moment. And so maybe it looks like we are changing the tire of someone who is stranded on the side of the road. Maybe it looks like we are giving food to someone who is hungry in that moment. Maybe it looks like we go over to a friend who just lost their pet or a loved one. And it's the sense of answering God's call for us to go and to be present in a moment and to be Jesus for someone else. And sometimes this looks like lifelong calls, and sometimes it looks like a brief moment where we have to pause on maybe what we were doing that day or where we were going, and we answer this call of God. And so as we go from this place, I hope that you answer God's call. Maybe that call from God is this lifelong sense of vocation, but maybe it's also to respond in that moment, to be Jesus for someone today. Peace.